My name is Jack. I'm 35 years old and a freelance graphic designer living alone in the suburbs of Los Angeles. I'm a bit of a loner and don't have many social activities after work. I prefer the quiet solitude of home. 2 years ago in the fall, after resigning from a design firm, I rented a 2-story cabin in the northwest suburbs of LA to start my new life. The cabin was small with just me living there, surrounded by woods and very secluded. I had arranged with the landlord to come inspect the cabin every Sunday afternoon. I enjoyed working, watching movies, or sketching alone at home, and occasionally drove to the city to pick up necessities. The landlord reminded me this week to be alert of the recent break-ins in the area and take measures to enhance home security. I had already lived in the cabin alone for 2 months. The initial days were very peaceful and I got used to the isolated life. However, last week, a terrifying experience happened that I still have a hard time coming to terms with. That day I worked late into the night on a new website design project, not driving home until after 9 p.m. As soon as I opened the door, I felt something was off about the vibe, as if someone had been here. After thorough checking, I noticed the magazines on the coffee table that used to be neatly stacked were clearly rummaged through, and the vase on the dining table had changed direction. My first reaction was to immediately review the indoor surveillance footage. Indeed, around 5 p.m., the video showed a man in a black hoodie climbing over the fence of my home, lingering in the yard for a bit before quickly taking off. At that moment, I deeply regretted not calling the police first, but foolishly reviewing the footage instead. Just as I picked up my phone about to dial 911, the entire house plunged into sudden darkness. Power was out. The house became pitch black instantly, and I could barely make out the outlines of the furniture. Other than the sound of my increasingly heavier breathing, the space was dead silent. I tried to stay calm, fumbling to grab my phone from the messy desk to turn on the flashlight and illuminate my surroundings. Right then, 2 loud bang-bang sounds came from upstairs, as if someone was bashing the walls forcefully. This was followed by a low groan and heavy footsteps. Someone was pacing upstairs. I felt my blood turn to ice in an instant. Trying hard to steady my trembling hands, I tiptoed around the objects on the floor and gently opened the bedroom door to sneak inside. I hid myself in the depth of the closet and dialed 911. "Please stay calm, officers will be there soon to check it out. Please open the door to cooperate with investigation when they arrive," said the female operator calmly. I whispered in acknowledgement and hung up the phone, only able to wait silently. The next 10-something minutes felt like a century. Through the crack of the closet door, I saw the bedroom door being slowly pushed open as a man's figure appeared in the doorway. He was waving his phone's flashlight left and right, seemingly checking for something. Just then, the siren sounded from afar, and he immediately fled. Minutes later, with the police's assistance, I went through every corner of the house again, and found the computer in the study missing, likely the intruder's target. After police reviewed the surveillance, they captured another culprit involved in burglaries the next day. I breathed a long sigh of relief, temporarily resolving the security threat. But every night since, I still think back to the panicking moments when the power went out that day. I wonder what I would do if a real robbery happens when I live alone like this. The incident has become a lingering shadow in my mind. My name is Jim and I'm a 40-year-old freelance writer. I lived alone in a dilapidated 2-story house in a remote countryside area. The small brick house was situated on a desolate plot of land, without a single neighbor in sight. Whenever I drove into town for supplies, it took over 10 minutes before encountering another residence along the way. I chose to live here because the rent was extremely cheap. Plus, I dislike noise and hoped to have ample space to plant vegetation. Although the area was secluded and dreary, it was enough for me. After moving in for a while, I gradually got used to the solitary life devoid of neighbors. I busied myself with household chores daily, tending to my small garden. Other than occasional trips into town for necessities, I spent most of my time in this small house amidst the wilderness. 2 years of tranquil life went by, until one terrifying incident shattered my unchanging routine. It was a rainy night. I was home alone reading a book indoors. The sky was already dark, with light rain pattering outside. I read for a while and decided to shower and sleep. The moment I stood up, the house abruptly went pitch black, all appliances instantly shutting off. I realized there must have been a power outage. This wasn't uncommon given the remote area. I stayed calm, finding a flashlight and candles, preparing to get through the blackout. Just as I located the matches to light a candle, a blurry shadow suddenly flashed across my vision. I looked up in surprise. It was already late into the night, without a glimmer of light outdoors. My house sat alone amidst the wilderness. There shouldn't have been anyone. Yet I was certain I saw a figure pass by the window in that instant. I grew extremely nervous, switching off the flashlight, not daring to make any sound. I stood still for over 10 minutes, but nothing else happened. When I relit the candle, there was no trace left outside the window. I must have been seeing things, I assured myself, but still decided not to sleep, waiting until sunrise. Little did I know, my nightmare was only just beginning. As I sat there lost in thought, a shrill pounding suddenly came from upstairs, the jarring impacts resounding deafeningly in the lifeless silence. I felt my entire body freeze up, rigid with fear. Someone was clearly ransacking the second floor, violently pounding the walls and furniture, the crashes thunderous to my ears. I realized someone had invaded my house, wrecking everything upstairs in the cover of darkness. I felt weak and chilled, but still mustered the courage to carefully ascend the stairs with the candle. The second floor was pitch black, and I could vaguely make out pictures hung askew on the walls, items scattered on the floor. Just as I paused on the second floor, an unidentified object suddenly hurtled towards me. I rolled aside instinctively, the object slamming heavily into the wall behind me with a booming thud. Too frightened to care now, I bolted downstairs on all fours, dashing straight for my car. I sped off from this ghostly place as fast as I could. My mind blank, drenched in cold sweat the entire drive, endlessly replaying what had just happened. I finally accepted that it wasn't my imagination, someone had been inside my house, and was set on harming me. I drove erratically for 2 hours before finally going to the police station. The officer on night duty registered my account, promising to send an investigative team to my residence that very night, as the intruder likely still remained. The police accompanied me back to my house, still shrouded in pitch black just as I had left it. Scouring with flashlights, they found a dagger in my bedroom, the entire house ransacked. What terrified me most was that the horrific intruder was nowhere to be found. The police speculated he may have been mentally unstable, and left after making arrangements. I chose not to remain, fleeing the haunting scene. It's been months since the chilling encounter, but flashes of that terrifying night still frequently replay in my mind. I dare not imagine what grim fate I may have met, had I not escaped. Just the thought still sends shivers down my spine, unable to calm my nerves for a long time after. My name is Lydia. I'm 35 years old and an English teacher at a public high school in Chicago. I live alone in a small gated community in Chicago's western suburbs. The wooden house is situated next to a forest in a relatively secluded environment. As an introvert who enjoys solitude, I chose to reside in this tranquil place. This incident happened on a frigid winter night 2 years ago. I was a new contract teacher back then, busy preparing lessons and grading assignments daily, spending most weekends immersed in work. That night I was home alone, with a pile of student test papers to grade over the weekend. Dusk crept in as I sat under a few floor lamps, continuing to mark up the test papers. The clock struck 1 a.m. Feeling somewhat drowsy, I decided to first take a hot shower, then go to bed. Just as I picked up my pajamas and headed for the bathroom, the house abruptly went pitch black. I then realized the power was out. I dug out my phone's flashlight to illuminate the room. At first I didn't think much of it, planning to just tough it out through the blackout night. As I sat leaning against the wall, suddenly came a loud thump-thump knocking on the door, startlingly harsh in the dead of night. I grew alert, gazing towards the door. It's so remote here, who could come knocking this late into the night? I held my breath, listening intently for any sound outside. A few seconds later came another flurry of urgent knocks, seemingly impatient for me to open up quickly. I peered outside, vaguely making out a masculine silhouette looming in front of the door, but couldn't clearly see his face. I made no response, just waiting silently for him to leave on his own. The man seemed to grow impatient, suddenly raising his voice, yelling, "Open up." His irritated tone sent a chill down my spine. I still decided not to open the door rashly, and stealthily took out my phone to call the police. Just then, the man kicked violently at the door, making a loud bang sound, even loosening the peephole. I was so frightened that I dropped my phone, then quickly crawled to the corner of the living room, picking up my phone to redial 911, while anxiously staring at the door, terrified that the intruder might force his way in. The banging and shouting outside the door didn't cease during my call with the operator. The man even tried forcibly twisting the door handle, violently rattling it. A strong unease and fear arose in me. His actions were too aggressive. No ordinary person would act this way deep into the night. I anxiously awaited the police's rescue, preparing myself for any possibilities. I suddenly recalled there were still some open windows in the house. Fearing the man might attempt to break in through them, I tiptoed to each room, carefully checking and securing every window. Just then a shadow flashed by outside. I was petrified. The intruder had gotten into my yard. I held my breath, grabbing a baseball bat to stand guard at the bedroom door, terrified that he might enter from anywhere at any moment. After a few more agonizingly long minutes, the noises outside gradually subsided. But I remained on high alert, ready for any impending changes. Finally, I heard the sound of police sirens approaching louder and louder, eventually stopping at my door. I opened the door in relief to let the officers in, explaining the entire ordeal. They searched every corner outside meticulously, but the man was nowhere to be found. I asked the police about the man's motive, but they said it was hard to deduce. They advised me to be extra cautious lately, and that they'll step up night patrols. I thanked them as I saw the officers off. The moment I closed the door, I heaved a long sigh of relief, slumping weakly against the wall. Although it was over, the entire encounter still left me unsettled. What exactly was that man's purpose harassing my house so late into the night? This sudden terror left me shaken for a long time after.